Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Warzone today got a very interesting update in terms of meta changes. You might have seen it already, but earlier on today we covered the 1.39 title update patch notes, and the update in and of itself didn't include too many weapon changes, but what it did to one specific gun was rather interesting. According to the Warzone patch notes, we saw some changes to the TAQ Evolver that basically set in stone a larger differentiation between its 7.62 ammo and its 5.56 ammo. They wanted to differentiate how the 7.62 behaved and made it feel more like a long-range heavy option than the 5.56 ammo feel a lot more lightweight and aggressive. And that's what these initial changes would indicate. They obviously increased the base movement some. They decreased the fire rate a ton though on the base 7.62 ammo. They increased the target flinch, and then on the 5.56 belts that are available, they buffed the movement speed a ton basically across the board and added a fire rate benefit of 857 RPM. However, it does seem like this was not the only changes that were implemented, because on the multiplayer side of things, we saw several similar updates to the TAQ Evolver, but just more in depth. So they made TTK changes. They updated the maximum damage, so it's close range damage. Its max damage range was updated as well from 35 to 40 meters, so on and so forth. Various different changes to the 5.56 belts with, different damage updates and values there. And shout out the man, the myth, the legend, Jay got himself. He was doing some preliminary testing here, and he says, so the TTK changes did impact the TAQ Evolver in Warzone, but the Striker 9 changes that were mentioned in the multiplayer blog didn't affect Warzone. So there's a lot of confusion going on at the patch notes right now and what's actually translated as a global update to the weapon in multiplayer and Warzone, and what's Warzone specific. They really got to update that and work a little bit more on that, I feel like. He does also say the fire rate changes were accurate within 20 meters on the 5.56 ammo. It's a little nuts. So let's talk about some builds here, because with his general TTK chart that he depicts for the TAQ Evolver with the base 500 RPM and the 857, things are a little bit interesting now, or more so, different than what they were before in terms of what you want to choose for certain situations. So as we get into breaking down some setups here, quick reminder, if you're new to the channel or you simply haven't subscribed yet, every single day I got you covered with news, updates, patch notes, meta breakdowns, right as they all happen. So if you want to guarantee you're always up to date, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you enjoy this video, if you find it helpful, do me a favor, drop a like on it. It is always really appreciated. But initially now with these ammo changes, I wanted to give you guys some practical builds for each different ammo type. The 5.56 ammo in particular, I feel like, is what got the larger buff here today that really makes it actually worth using, because beforehand it just wasn't. It didn't deal any damage. They weren't really viable whatsoever as magazine attachments in the general meta for close range, mid-range, long range. Now initially here on the 7.62 ammo style, I would, conveniently enough, was going to make a video on the Evolver after season 2's update, because the fire rate was crazy. It was easy to use, but unfortunately now with these changes that sort of negates that, because this fire rate's largely different. You can see before we break down some of these attachments, this is a 7.62 build, and this fire rate is a lot slower. Now, I'm not even controlling the recoil here, by the way. That's just how it goes. There's like no recoil on the 7.62 ammo type right now. You don't really have to move the gun all that much. Like, when I start shooting, I'm not touching the thumbstick. There's a little bit of movement there, and it's more noticeable over long range, but I'm not controlling anything. The gun's doing most of that just with this general build on there. So in terms of using the 7.62 ammo now, this is definitely something you'd be using for long range if you wanted a low recoil choice. Now, its damage is not going to be as good as it was before. Its overall TTK is going to be a little bit awkward over the long range because of the RPM changes there. It's going to focus more on accuracy over just sheer power output like pre-update, right? So you do have to be accurate. Luckily, as you saw, it's super easy, but at the same time, the LMG category is already so competitive that things like the Holger, the DG, and the Bruin still are going to be right up there because they haven't seen any changes lately. But Spirit Fire Suppressor is a great choice here for range, velocity, and control. The vertical grip is pretty solid for an actual strafe speed and some decent vertical control too. Honestly, if you took this off though and just went for something like a Hound 9G grip instead, this one does have the interesting underbarrels. You'd be getting even more horizontal, and that might make that pattern even more like no recoil whatsoever. So just depending on what you value there, you can mess around with that. Right to this long barrel for the better range, velocity, and control on there. 2.5 times optic. The Rampart heavy stock's a great choice here too, doing a lot for recoil in general there. So for the long range, this would be a pretty solid setup there. Now, if we wanted to focus entirely on the 5.56 buff, this is something that changes drastically right away. So if we go into the firing range just with the 5.56 ammo on there, you can see, I mean, this thing goes crazy. For whatever reason, there is that weird visual bug with your sights when you shoot in the firing range that causes them to glitch out, but like, this fire rate's nuts, and this turns it a lot more into like a close to mid-range style weapon here. And even if we go into the advanced stats, you'll see that it kind of kills the range a lot here. 24% decreases across the board, 50% decrease to its effective damage range, but it goes crazy on the fire rate. The general visual recoil is a lot easier here as well. So we want to play to the strengths here. Personally, I really like those iron sights for a mid-range style build. I also really love the strafe speed potential that you get here as well. We saw the benefits included there to the strafe speed on the 5.56 ammo. The Assault 60 stock does 6% to your ADS movement speed. Also, I do think some control is still necessary here though. So something like the Righteous Long Barrel, basically getting back that effective damage range, adding more velocity and control to this is a decent choice as well, I would say. The control here is a little bit iffy. That said, if you're again wanting to go crazy on the strafe speed, this does 8%. The Seraphic vertical grip goes pretty crazy on that. So you could throw on that, but we're gonna need some horizontal control here. So that's where I'd be looking for something. I believe I actually have it favorited. Just kidding, it didn't work here. It's the Cassis Brake, obviously goes all in on that horizontal control, and this is a great choice for that. So that's 5 attachments now all of a sudden that are gonna really play into this insane strafe. Look at the movement on this when you're aiming down sights. That is ridiculous for an LMG. It's just so different from every other LMG in the game because this isn't really viable for range. It's more of like a mid-range LMG. You can see, honestly, it's pretty easy to control. Now, I am putting in the work on my thumbstick right now and actually controlling it, and you can see there is some horizontal bounce and some horizontal shake for it. So this is something that really is gonna be aimed towards that mid-range, the close range as an LMG, which is kind of awkward, but it is really unique and fun in that same sense. Now, if you did want to go a little bit more conservative on the strafe speed and go a little bit more in for control, you'd obviously want to be changing this underbarrel over to something like the Hound 9G, and you could even go in on something like the Rampart Heavy stock here as well, and suddenly you'll have a 5.56 build for the mid-range that really is extremely easy to use across the board and a lot more consistent for maybe some further out mid-range there if you wanted the 5.56 ammo instead. So you got a couple of different viable builds here depending on what you want to do with your ammo type. 7.62 is kind of clunky and slow, and truthfully, I feel like there's some other LMGs that I would favor a little bit more because they are more aggressive with that. But then if you wanted to switch things up and use a very unique LMG build for the close range, you got obviously the strafe build, and then you got a very fast, easy to use 5.56 build here as well. So the Evolver changed a lot with this update, for some good and for some bad. Really, its behavior though is what changes the most. Now it does kind of feel like you're using essentially 2 different weapons depending on your ammo type here. So some important notes to, be mindful of when you're building your setups here. If you enjoyed the video though, do me a favor, drop a like on it. It is always really appreciated. And if you're new to the channel, you want to guarantee that every single day you are up to date with all things going on in COD, be sure to hit that subscribe button on your way out. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.